Hi there! In this video, I'm going to show you how I turned this Squarespace template into this colorful website for a more fun and bubbly brand than the original template. If you're creating a website for your business, you're most likely going to be starting with some kind of template. It would be a lot of unnecessary work to start completely from scratch, but the template that you decide to start with that has the right content structure for your business might not have the right visual vibe for your brand. So in this video, I'm going to pretend I am a business who is using this template, and I'm going to walk you through all of the steps from changing out the content to changing the colors and the fonts and the button styles, pretty much everything that you would need to do when you are updating a template. These are universal things that would apply no matter what template you're using. Okay, so let's get into it. So this is a template that we're working with. Surprise, it's a template that I offer on my website. This template is great for service-based businesses, and I've chosen a fictional acting coach as my business that I'm going to be making this website for, just because that seemed fun. So I like to start by changing the color palette. So with most templates, there's not really any direction on how to change colors so that the design still works. For example, this is just one of the standard Squarespace templates, and down here there are some preset color palettes that you can choose from. But if we just choose this one, we can see that the design already breaks. There's not enough contrast here between the text and the background. This template is using this color on top of this color, like the text on top of this color as the background. So there needs to be enough contrast between these two colors in order for this design to work. That's one of the color rules for this template. But that color rule of having these last two colors have good contrast is not necessarily going to be the same for all of these templates. They all have a random color scheme, and there's no direction on how to change the colors to maintain the right contrast, which means you'll most likely end up having to come into the color themes and change these individual color settings to match the new colors that we choose. And let me tell you from experience what a pain that can be. So when I made this template, I decided to address that issue by sticking to a color scheme that I explain in the guide that comes with the template. And it's basically this color should be the lightest, this one should be the darkest, this one should be the second lightest, this should be the second darkest, and then this middle one will be like an accent color. And as long as you stick to those general rules, the design should remain pretty balanced and you shouldn't have to redo any of the color settings. Down here in the presets that they give you, we can see that some of these presets follow this pattern that I just mentioned. Like this one right here has the two lightest colors here, and then the two darkest colors here, and then the middle one is kind of an accent color or just like a middle color. So if we choose this, it should look good right out of the box. And same with this one or this one. And in addition to these pre-made ones that come in Squarespace, this particular template of mine also comes with additional color palettes that I've built and tested specifically with this template, which is where I got this color palette that I ended up using here on this website. You can see as I'm making changes in the site styles panel, I'm also referencing the website to make sure that everything looks good. So after updating the colors, I am moving on to the fonts. Going into the heading font first, I was looking for a font that is more bold and playful than the heading font in the original template. And I went with this one called Capricimo and adjusted the letter spacing a bit. And I'm looking at that main header at the top of the website for reference. So then I went back into the paragraph font and changed it to a paragraph font that I feel works well with the heading font and adjusted the line height and the sizes. I always feel like less line height looks better visually, but for paragraph fonts, readability is the most important thing. So the line height should be spaced out enough so that it's easy to read. The button fonts in this template are the same as the paragraph font, but styled slightly differently, like they're all uppercase. So since I changed the paragraph font, I'll also want to change the button fonts to maintain that consistency. And then I felt like the bolder font weight didn't look as good with this font, so I reduced the font weight a bit. And just for fun, I changed the style to italic to see how that would look, and I actually liked it, so I kept it like that. In Squarespace, you have 3 different button types and you can assign a different font style to each one, but I tend to like to keep them all the same for consistency, and then I just change the look of the actual button itself. So here I am updating the secondary and tertiary button fonts to be the same as the primary. Now that the site styles are all updated, I'm moving on to swapping out the content. So I have a separate document where I've written out all the text that I want to put on this website, and I'm just copying and pasting from that. And this is all just kind of like dummy text. I didn't really put too much effort into it, but if this were a real website, I actually have a copywriting worksheet that I usually use to help me plan out what to write on websites. And that worksheet is available on my website if you are interested in it. I will put the link also in the description below this video, but if you buy a template, the worksheet is included. So that would probably be where you would be pulling your text from to put in here. Before I upload an image, you can see here that I made sure to resize it. Usually I'm looking to make sure the image is around 1500 pixels to maybe like 1800 pixels on the longest side, depending on where the image is going to go on the website and like how big it's going to be. If it's going to be a full screen image, like a section background image, then you would probably want it to be a little bit bigger. And then after resizing the image, I run it through tinypng.com to compress it even further. And we're doing all of this to reduce the file size of the image so that your website doesn't take too long to load. So originally, before I resized it, this image was 3.2 megabytes. And then after doing all of this, it ended up at 147 kilobytes, which is a huge reduction in size. You ideally want to try to get all of your images under 500 kilobytes if possible. The lower the better. But you also have to make sure the quality of the image isn't affected too much because you don't want to have blurry images on your website. And here I pasted some text and it changed the text style for the whole block to be heading 4. So we can just come in here and change the text style. Originally this block had a heading 4 and then a line break and a paragraph 2, but I thought that the heading 4 was a bit too bold here and we already have a bold header up here. So for balance, I changed it to be the paragraph font, and paragraph 1 is the text style that I use for paragraph text that I want to be a little bit bigger or stand out a little bit more. And then paragraph 2 should be for all of your regular body text, and paragraph 3 is the smallest and usually reserved for like footers or tiny disclaimer text and stuff like that. To make the website feel more friendly and playful, I decided to round the corners on some of the elements, and then I played around with rounding the corners of the elements up here and resizing the shape in the background. In the end, I ended up not liking these changes I made, so I'll show you how I reverted back to the original a bit later in the video. But for now, I just wanted to mention that experimenting and trying new things, even if they don't end up working out, that's all part of the design process. As I am swapping out text, one of the things I'm paying attention to is the vertical spacing above and below elements. I want to make sure it looks balanced. And as I'm updating the text on the page, you can see that sometimes elements tend to shift around on the page and change size, and that's fine. That just happens in Squarespace all the time. So we can just resize things and move things around to get them back to the right place. And for consistency, I am rounding the corners of this rectangle here too. And then for this background color, I had the idea to add a striped background because I thought that having a pattern would add to the fun, playful look that we're going for with this brand. And I'm using some custom code to add that striped background and make it dynamic so that it uses the colors directly from our Squarespace color palette. And I have a video up on YouTube that walks you through in detail how I did this, and it also gives you that code snippet. So if you're interested, you can go and check that video out. I again thought there was too much bold text in this section, so I changed these text elements from heading 4 to paragraph 1. You can always add new blocks to sections by clicking into the section and then clicking on this add block button. For buttons, I always like to go into the design and change it to fit instead of fill, and that way all the buttons on the website are a consistent size. Consistency is one of the key elements of good design. Here I'm just continuing to round the corners of rectangles, and after doing that I felt like the text looked off, so I changed it to be center aligned and I made the blocks a little bit smaller. And then I noticed that this text block was still using the old font. This is actually set to the monospace text style, so you can use monospace to give you an extra font style that you can use as like an accent font or for subheadings. And to change the monospace font, you would go over to your font settings in your site styles and then go into miscellaneous. This is the font style that the monospace text will use. And then keeping with the rounded corners theme that I was going for with this website, I updated the button styles to be this pill shape, which I felt worked well with this website. After adding this image, the face was like not centered, so you can actually change the focal point of an image by just moving this circle here. To change the section background image, you would go into edit section in the background tab, and then you can replace the image here or add a video background. But I decided I was going to instead add that striped background again because I didn't have a good background image to use here. Up here, there are some icons that I wanted to replace to match the new text that was there. So I went over to Google Fonts where they have a bunch of free icons you can use, and you can change the line weight, change the color. So I found some icons, changed the color, and downloaded them and uploaded them to the website. And then back up here at the top, I still didn't really like how this section looked. And I had the idea, since this was supposed to be like an acting coach website, I thought maybe I can turn these shapes right here into like a film strip. But then I didn't end up liking how that looked, and I wanted to revert it back to what it used to be. So luckily with this template, I have a page that has all of the original section layouts from all of the pages in the template. So I can go back and grab the original version of this top section by clicking on this heart icon to save this section to my favorites. And then going back to the home page, I can add a new section, add in that saved section that I had just saved, and then I would just have to swap out all of this content again. But basically that just resets the layout for me. So that's kind of a cool feature of this template. You don't have to worry about messing things up because you always have a backup version. And then you can also use those section layouts in that all sections page anywhere on the website. Like if you wanted to add more sections to a page, or if you're building out a new page, you have all of those section layouts to choose from. This section right here is a special section in Squarespace called a list section. And with list sections, you can enter some content. Here it's just text content, but you could also have images and buttons, and it will automatically format it into this nice layout that scrolls. You'll know you have a list section if you can't grab elements and like move them around. And if you click into the section, you should see this edit content button. So that's where you would go to swap out the content. Unfortunately, at the time of recording this, they don't have a way to round the corners of this card background. So I had to add some custom CSS to get that to work. And I'll include that code snippet in the description below if you are interested. And then the last thing is updating the footer. I decided to make it simple and just remove some of these links from here. And that gave me some space to add an Instagram feed. So you can just add a block and add the Instagram block, and then you just have to connect your Instagram account and it will automatically pull from your Instagram profile. So that's kind of cool. And then I was just kind of moving things around in the footer, trying to find a balance with all of these elements. And then one more thing is to update the favicon, which is this icon that's up here in the browser tab. To do that, I'll go into the settings and then go to favicon and then just upload a very small icon here. It should be only like 300 pixels by 300 pixels. It needs to be a square or else it's going to get stretched out. And after I upload this icon, I saved it and refreshed the page, and it still was showing the old icon. And that's just because the old icon gets cached into your browser. So I opened up an incognito browser just to test it out. And here you can see the new updated icon is showing up. And I forgot to mention this before, but one of the most important things is to update the site title, of course. So to do that, you would go into edit and then click on edit site header, and then click on the site title and logo, and then here. And here you can update the site title, or you can add a logo image here if you have one. But even if you add a logo image, which replaces the text that shows up here, you should still update the site title because that is the text that shows up here in the browser tab and also in Google search results. So this is very important. So this is the final version of the template. I think it turned out so cute and colorful. I really like the striped backgrounds too. You can actually visit this demo site. It is live. I will leave a link to that in the description below this video if you want a closer look. I would love to hear what you think of how it turned out. Let me know in the comments below. Give this video a like if you liked it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!